Yeah, now we are.
Great. I think we're on the hour, so we might just get started. We're going to do introductions to begin with anyway, so it'll give people time to join if they need to. But hello everyone and welcome to our webinar. We're really pleased to be here today to talk about the latest findings from Qualification Check's UK mid-cycle fraud report. For those of you who don't know us, I'm Rachel Wales, Head of Global Accounts. I work very closely with our university partners, and I'm really pleased to be joined by one of my colleagues whose name many of you will recognise, although may not have had the opportunity to meet him yet, as we do tend to keep you locked up, don't we, Abhishek? But introducing Abhishek.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Abhishek. I'm the Global Head of Service Delivery at Qualification Check. I've spent around 13 years in the verification industry and 3 years with QC. And in those 13 years, I've learned that people can be incredibly creative when it comes to academic fraud. In fact, some applicants have invested more effort into creating fake qualification than they would have spent earning the real one. So today, we are going to spend a little time looking at fraud from two perspectives. Rachel will walk us through the trends, challenges, broader fraud landscape that universities are facing today. And then I'll come back and share 3 real-life case studies that show you how these frauds actually present themselves, and more importantly, how they're detected. So Rachel, over to you.
Thanks, Abhishek. I think you've covered most of the agenda there, but just to kind of add to that, we're going to keep today fairly high level and quick, because what we're also going to be doing is sending you our new full report afterwards, along with a recording of this session and access to our new beta risk assessment tool afterwards too. So we'll follow up with you on those. I guess one of the key questions is, why does this matter now? Well, in short, it's so you know what you need to watch out for and potentially can act now whilst there's still time. This is particularly important because the tighter BCA metrics are obviously making your lives a lot harder and more stressful right now. We also appreciate that finding the right balance is more critical than ever. So you need to protect those genuine applicants who have the right qualifications to be successful long-term at your university, whilst avoiding unnecessary friction for you and for them. And at the same time, you're trying to make sure that fraud is identified before it becomes a compliance or reputational issue for you. So it's really critical now to be able to act on it. I also want to introduce you to the new name we've given it, which is the verification gap. We have called it this because it highlights the widening distance between applicants who successfully verify, so those genuine applicants, and those who don't verify, but also those cases that never complete because they disappear during the process. I'll be introducing you to what that looks like in more detail shortly, including the new concept of matured rejected and why that's so important. The full report that you get also looks into more of what is driving those new fraud signals, so it's definitely worth a read. And as always, a key reason for doing this now is that the run-up to September creates a very specific pressure point when it comes to fraud. Applicant volumes start to really ramp up and are at the highest. Decisions are having to move really quickly. Your teams are super stretched, and the CAS and enrolment deadlines are getting closer. And as such, it makes this point much easier for fraud to slip through. Your teams are more miss it, and fraudsters absolutely take advantage of that. So with that in mind, let's look at the headline findings of our new report. So new reports analysed. We've taken over 17,500 checks that we've done for 40 university partners and qualifications issued across 60 countries between October of last year and June of this year. The headline is that the fraud signal's risen. So from it's now at 3.95, up from 2.86 at the same point last year. That is a 38% year-on-year increase. That's the headline, but here is the part that really sort of matters looking at this new report. So the new fraud signal does not mean that every case involved is a forged document. It combines checks that were explicitly classified as not verified with cases that applicants have started but then walked away from after we've gone back to them for more information. So the useful question is not simply, has the fraud rate gone up? Yes, it has, but the more useful question is, what is driving that increase? Is it a document that the issuing body says is fake or falsified, or is it an applicant who begins the process but does not complete it after we've challenged them? Those are two different risks and they require two different responses. Looking at the fraud, how the fraud signal has shifted from could not verify to did not resolve, this is probably the most important shift in this new report. So last year at this point, the fraud signal was more evenly split between cases that could not be verified and cases that did not resolve. This cycle, that balance has changed. Let me just quickly explain these statuses that you can see here. So a verified outcome means the primary source has confirmed the qualification, straightforward. Not verified outcome means it cannot be confirmed at the primary source. So that may be due to fraudulent documentation, incomplete studies, inflated grades, or another reason. An action required case is where we've gone back, or a rejected case is where we've gone back to the applicant for more information. That doesn't automatically mean fraud. They simply may have missed a document, provided a poor scan, or entered something incorrectly. We know all applicants don't always follow or read processes very well. As such, what we're doing is only including the case in the fraud signal once it's remained unresolved for more than 45 days, because we think that's a really fair amount of time for genuine applicants to come back. So we've now called this the matured rejected rate. So looking at these stats, the not verified rate has actually fallen year on year. So from 1.23 to 0.99% during this early period of the cycle. However, the matured rejected rate has increased from 1.63 to 2.96. As a result, non-completion now makes up 75% of the fraud signal, compared with 57% last year. So the shift is clear. The signals move from could not verify to did not resolve. This may show that applicants are still entering the process, but then disengaging when challenged or asked for further evidence. They just simply disappear. And we see this, I've seen this time and time again with a lot of our university partners. So particularly where not verified rates start to reduce and plateau, because the word is out that they have a robust verification system in place to prevent fraud. And that deterrent effect is at its absolute best. But it's likely opportunistic fraudsters will go elsewhere, because they know that you've got those processes in place. But there is still potentially fraud being attempted, and maybe early in the cycle, but they disappear when we're challenging them. So in terms of why that non-completion matters, just to reinforce, it is because non-completion rates move before refusal and withdrawal rates do, which makes them a useful early warning sign. And the important thing is to follow the case through if you can. So think about, did it complete? Was it withdrawn? Was the CAS refused? Did it later resolve, or is it still sitting without a clear outcome? Unresolved checks, or these non-completion checks, should therefore be tracked regularly, and consider whether you should actually be moving the applicant forward in the process without a final outcome, which we know some do and some don't. Moving on to the next slide. Another important insight of the report that we've talked about previously is that risk often follows the qualification origin. So not necessarily the applicant's nationality or current address, although we do see trends like Chinese applicants claiming to have studied in the US. So here the useful questions you should be asking are, where was the qualification issued? Which institution issued it? And is it, for example, on our high risk list or yours? What type of document is being verified, and what does historic data show you? Again, that could be yours or ours. An applicant living in the UK, for example, with an overseas qualification, so living in the UK but overseas qualification, should still be put through the same process as an applicant applying from that country from overseas. This will allow you to focus attention where the evidence supports it, rather than applying sort of blanket restrictions. The full report is also really useful in showing you where you don't necessarily need to add extra friction in the process. So it points you towards high risk cases and helps prevent teams from repeatedly reviewing the same evidence. So you don't have to apply the same rules everywhere. Use the data to see where you need to spend most time. So I urge you to take a look at that. But in simple terms, the key message is you need to verify everywhere, but you don't need to add unnecessary friction everywhere. You can be really targeted. If we look at qualification origins to watch, which I'm sure a lot of you be interested in, so which qualification origins are growing fastest are also showing some of the highest fraud signals. So looking at that not verified plus the matured rejected. Checks on Nigerian, Bangladeshi and Kenyan qualifications all grew strongly year on year. And those same origins appear towards the top of the current cycle watch list that we've got here. Saudi sits highest at 10.4%, but it is based on a smaller sample. So treat that as a watch list signal rather than a settled trend. And again, the report goes into sector stories, Nigeria, Bangladesh and Kenya, where higher risk is being accompanied by strong growth in check volumes. And the headline rates are Kenya at 10.3%, we've got Bangladesh at 9.5% and Nigeria at 8%. One particularly important thing you'll find in the report also is that India accounts for 52% of all not verified outcomes. So that kind of shows that the type of risk matters. The same overall fraud signal can be hiding very different problems. In India, for example, the issue is more heavily concentrated around document authenticity and confirmation at source. Nigeria and Ghana show a different pattern, with more cases beginning, but then with the applicants dropping out during the process. So I guess the key message for you here is that it's not a reason to stop recruiting from these markets, but it is a reason to make sure that your recruitment growth, your verification processes, applicant follow-ups and compliance oversight are all keeping pace with each other. Just moving on. What does this mean for you and what actions can you be taking? So for admissions teams, we've got 5 suggestions here. One is to start checks earlier wherever you can. I know that's not always easy, but that is kind of a strong recommendation. Prioritise according to qualification origin and the document type. Where you can actively chase applicants who stop responding. I know a lot of you kind of have time periods where if they don't engage with the process, they get withdrawn. We do some chasing to some extent, but we'd always recommend a little chase, because some genuine applicants will complete once they've received a clear reminder. Again, we know they need a little help sometimes. And avoid treating every rejection as potential fraud too early. We think this 45-day matured rejected rate is very fair, and with the data sort of showing most will come back, genuine come back quickly if it is a genuine mistake. And keep additional manual review, focus where the evidence support it. So just don't waste your time where you don't need to. By doing the checks, what we're trying to aim is not a bigger barrier for every applicant, but it's applying the right check at the right time in the right place. For compliance, teams would recommend these things. So unresolved checks should be tracked regularly and treated as early warning metric. You should separate the not verified outcomes from matured rejected cases, because they represent different issues, therefore need treating differently. Report the settled fraud rate signal rather than the raw rejection counts, and be aware that the most recent cases may still be resolving. Break the data down by qualification origin, so that the overall average doesn't hide where risk is concentrated. You really need to look at, where the biggest risk markets are. Keep clear evidence of primary source verification. You may need it one day when UKVI are logging in and things like that. And link unresolved checks to CAS and enrolment outcomes so that each case reaches a clear conclusion. One thing I haven't put on these slides as well is, and I know we've got a few people this may be relevant to, but the report also highlights a recruitment angle that sits behind all of this. So in short, look at where your unresolved applicants come from. If one agent, campaign or recruitment channel repeatedly produces applicants who disengage during the verification process, that's not simply an operational issue. It's a recruitment quality flag that is definitely worth you investigating. So that's the data bit. I'm going to hand over to Abhishek now and his case studies. Abhishek.
Thanks, Rachel. Listening to Rachel, it's clear that education fraud isn't just increasing in volume, it's increasing in sophistication as well. So rather than talk about theory, I'd like to spend next few minutes sharing 3 real cases we have encountered. I have given them slightly more memorable names because after 13 years in verification, I have realized people remember stories far better than statistics. So the 3 cases are Ghost Graduate, World Traveler University, and the college that catfished everyone. So let's start with the Ghost Graduate. So this is for Boston University in US. One of our cases involved an applicant claiming to have completed masters in supply chain management from Boston between 2021 to 2023. The applicant submitted a degree certificate and transcript, both of which looked entirely credible. The university was prestigious, the formatting looked professional, nothing immediately jumped off the page. And this is exactly why these cases are dangerous. Most people expect fake documents to look fake. Unfortunately, that's no longer how fraud works. Today, some fraudulent documents look every bit as good as genuine ones. So we completed verification through university's official process. And the result? No record found. Not incomplete records, not a mismatch, no record at all. It was clearly an AI-generated one, which we identified later. So according to university's official records, this individual did not exist within the student database. At this point, I usually say we had a graduate who successfully completed a master's program without ever attending the university, which is a remarkable achievement if you think about it. Well, the lesson here is never let the reputation of a university replace the verification process. A document may look genuine. Only the institution can confirm whether whether it actually is. And at qualification check, because we directly deal with issuing authorities, we have much higher chances of catching this fraud as compared to others. Let's look at the case number 2. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. Um, well, the case number 2, as I called it earlier, it's the World Traveler University. Our second case involved CKIICT University in India. When we began our research, something felt unusual. The institution claimed to operate as a university, but we could not find recognized accreditation through either UGC or NAAC or other legitimate educational authorities. So we dug further and then we found something interesting. Although the institution presented itself as Indian, the domain registration details pointed elsewhere, specifically Lithuania. At that stage, the university seemed to have traveled internationally more than I have, which raised a very important question. Are we verifying a student or are we verifying the existence of the institution itself? The more research we completed, the clearer the answer became. No recognized accreditation, no legitimate educational recognition, multiple credibility concern. This is a classic diploma mill pattern. And the key learning from for admission teams is simple. When evaluating qualification, don't just verify the qualification, verify the awarding institution, because sometimes the applicant isn't the biggest risk, sometimes it's the university. So that's it for my case number 2. Moving on to the third case, the college that catfished everyone. So my final example comes from Cardiff European College. The applicant submitted academic documentation and helpfully included a website reference. Now, normally that's reassuring, right? A lot of applicants do that when they try to get their verification done quickly. There's documentation, there's website, there's branding. Everything appears consistent. The problem was when we investigated further, we identified concerns with the website itself and found that the branding used on the documents aligned with the same questionable online presence. In other words, the website was effectively validating the document and the document was validating the website. It was a perfect circle. It's like it's a bit like me, creating a website called Abhishek the greatest verification expert.com and then using that website as evidence during my performance review. I'd imagine HR would have a few questions, and rightly so. The lesson here is particularly important in today's digital world. A website is not evidence. A logo is not evidence. The professional PDF is not evidence. Independent verification is evidence. So, as we wrap up, what do these three cases tell us? The Boston University case reminds us that prestigious institution can be impersonated. The diploma mill case reminds us that sometimes we need to investigate the institution before we investigate the student. And the Cardiff case shows us how easy it has become to manufacture credibility online. Uh, that's it. Fraudsters are creative. Fortunately, verification professionals are curious, and curiosity usually wins. That's it. Over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Abhishek. As you say, it's getting harder and harder, and it's really just not about the documentation alone anymore. There's so many things that everyone needs to be aware of. So I think when we come to the September watch list, like what do you need to be looking out for as we kind of get closer to September? Well, the first is watch out for fast-growing origins that are also showing higher fraud signals. The second is be aware of applicants who stop responding once the verification has started. There might be a suspicious reason why they've not wanting to engage with the process anymore once challenged. Third is, and we've just touched on it again, fraud. Fraud isn't just about forged documents. You have to watch out for those fake websites. We talked about QR codes before, we talked about email trails and apparent verification routes that just simply don't exist. And the fourth is touching on the agents and the recruitment channels where applicant non-completion is usually high. So this practical watch list is not just about spotting those suspicious looking documents, it's also about applicant behaviour, unresolved checks and the pain points in the process where a case can sit for too long without a clear conclusion. You don't have an easy job, do you, Abhishek? I think before we close, I can't see that we've had any sort of questions or comments that we've had. Give you a bit more time to add those into the chat if you would like to. We will be also putting a sign up link in the comments through to our fraud bulletin that came out in June. These come out fairly regularly, so please do sign up and we'll make sure that you get those and any other kind of information that we release about fraud. Any more questions or any questions? Don't think so. I might just wrap up. We've finished. We've rattled through that quite quickly, haven't we, Abhishek? We're keen to give people time, but I guess as a bit of a as a closer, it's just a reminder that fraud risk, and I've probably reiterated this a couple of times now, and Abhishek's gone through it as well. But fraud isn't just about forged documents. And the practical actions for you to take away is verify earlier where you can, track those and resolve cases, use qualification, origin data, keep your admissions and compliance teams aligned where you can, use data and reporting to understand your own risk profile and apply the right level of checking in the right places, and make sure unresolved cases are followed through. Oh, we have got a question. Could you go through the fast growth origins with higher fraud signals again, please? Yeah, we've got a couple of times. Let's just go back. So we're looking here. As I mentioned, Saudi came up on top. Now we know that's not a huge market for a lot of you. And the report does sort of talk about the sample size. So although it's high, it's, as I say, it's one to kind of be aware of, that sample size was smaller than the others. Kenya 10.3, Bangladesh 9.5. India's on here still, as we would expect. UK, I think, is sometimes a bit of a surprise for people, but UK's on here at 2.2, and we've got China on there as well. Any other questions or any final thoughts from you, Abhishek, whilst we've got a couple of minutes? Otherwise, we can wrap up quickly.
I think we can wrap. Yeah.
Wonderful. Just as a reminder, we'll send the slides or the session. We'll send you the fraud report, and if there's any follow-up questions, Abhishek and myself have left our email addresses for you here. So, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.